Hello and welcome to the second lesson of the Ajax Foundations course of Rails Karate. In this lesson, we'll create our first example using Ajax. Before you start, don't forget to follow us in our social networks. At Bastimbalandi on Twitter. We're also as at Rails Karate. Follow us on Facebook, and if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, you can always subscribe to our newsletter, Create Your Startup with one email a week. Before start, go to the article of the video, or the blog post of the video. You will find the URL in an annotation of the video, in the video, or in the description in YouTube. So let's get started. Before we start, we need to set up our some code snippets. So first of all, open your main.coffee and run the command for compile from CoffeeScript to JavaScript. So here's the command, make sure it is running. The second thing you need to do is, I created a main.css file. We added some styling for this example. So go to the article of the video and copy all this stuff until here. Then you will need to copy some HTML. I copy it here. Here's the HTML for our index. Copy and paste it here. And also there is jumbotron.html file. Copy it from here. Great. Now make sure you in your index.html that the root, the path to our JavaScript is right. js/main.js. Yes, it is. Great. Now continue with the lesson. So once you have everything set up and running, let's run the project. And okay, open this. Let's see. Great. Now as you can see, we have here some text. The styling did its work. So let's start. An Ajax communication process has steps that we need to follow if we want our communication with the server to be successful. In this lesson, we'll explain to you those basic steps for creating an Ajax request. We'll show you step by step and explain you several things you will need in the future. So let's get started. The first step for creating an Ajax request is to create an XML HTTP request object. So let's create it. I'm going to create a variable here called XHR, but you can call it whatever you want. So I'm going to create here XML HTTP request. Great, now I created a new XML HTTP request object. The shorthand for this is XHR. So we are going to call this object XHR. With creating this object, we are telling to the browser to prepare for Ajax. So this is the first step if we want to create an Ajax request. Also, if you want to make multiple requests, you will need a separate XML HTTP request object or XHR object. But we will see that later. But so far, we're going just to work with one XHR. So let's continue. The second step for creating an Ajax request is to create a callback function. Let me explain to you what is a callback function in an Ajax request. For example, when you are in Twitter and you scroll down and you load more and more tweets, the function has the way of include all those new tweets at the end of the page. So the callback function receives the data responded by the server. So the response goes to the callback function, and we decide what to do with that data. We can add more tweets at the end of the page, or do anything we want. So let's create an Ajax request. A callback function. You know that we have events in JavaScript. So we have events for clicks, for scrolling. Any interaction with the DOM has an event. And you should know everything about events if you did the jQuery Basics course of Race Karate. We also have events for Ajax. So in order to trigger our callback function, we need to use an event. And this event, the event we want to use, the most important event in an XHR object, is called onReadyStateChange. This event is going to be called, or it's going to be triggered every time our XHR changes its state. So let's create the function. And here we can, for example, we can know when our request is finished. So the state of the request is saved in a property called readyState. So xhr.readyState, and it stores the number 4 when our request has ended and we receive the response from the server. So we call this property and we say, well, if it is number 4, it means that we already received a response from the server and the request finished. So we can do something here. What I want to do in this time, I'm going to select a div with an ID Ajax, and I'm going to change its contents to the contents of the response from the server. In this case, we can get the contents of the response using a property called response text. So the request has a property called response text, and you will understand in a minute what I want to do here. So great. Now we created a callback function, and when the process of the Ajax request ends, we are going to fill here in the HTML this div with some content we are going to receive from the server. Great. Now we need a third step, because so far we just prepared the browser for Ajax and then we created the callback function. The third step is to open a request. So the XHR object has a method called open, and this method receives 2 parameters. The first one is the HTTP method we want to use, and the second one is where we want to point the Ajax request, or what we want to get. In this case, we can point to another script or whatever we want. In this case, I'm going to point to the jumbotron.html file. So I'm going to get the jumbotron.html contents. Well, here we have the HTTP method. Actually, there are many methods. The most common are get and post, that we are going to call about them later in the next lesson. But we also have patch, put, delete. All those are HTTP methods. When we see the topic about APIs, you will understand in a great deal what we are doing here. So we want to use this HTTP method and get the contents of jumbotron.html. Great. So actually, what we want to do is to replace dynamically what the contents of this div with the contents of this file. Okay. So let's continue. Once we open the request, we actually need to send it. Okay, but I'm going to reload the page again. So great, anything is ready yet? So let's see what happened when we send the request. We can send it using the method send. Okay. Actually, here is where you can send data to the server. For example, if you want to send inputs from the user, or you want to send, for example, the IP of the user, or whatever kind of data you can imagine, you can send to the server, and the server will understand the data you send. But in this case, I don't want to send anything, so I can use the send method empty. Great. Now let's see Ajax in action. So I'm going to reload the page, and ta-da! As you can see, we have Ajax in action. But actually, everything happened pretty fast. So let's see in action. Great. So open the console, the JavaScript console, and right-click and check this log XML HTTP requests. I'm going to reload again, and you will see the request in the console. Great. So as you can see here, we have the XHR finished loading, and we have the HTTP method we used. Where are we pointing? As you can see, we are pointing to jumbotron.html. The other is the URL of our website, because, well, actually, this is a path. Okay. Great. So, but I want to make it more dynamic or interactive. So let's create a button that sends the request, the Ajax request. So below this div, I'm going to create a new button with ID load. And when the user clicks it, on click, I'm going to call a function called send Ajax. Start now. Okay, so we are calling this function when we click the button. So let's create a function send Ajax, and here I'm going to add the xhr.send method. The fourth step, I'm going to add it to this function. Okay. So let's see, and the next thing I want to do is to hide the button. Load that hide. Great. So let's see again and take a look how it works in action. So I'm going to reload the page again. And here we have our button, and once we click it, we send the request. Great. So everything is working now. So let's recap. So the first step is to create an XML HTTP request object, or an XHR object, and it will prepare our browser for use JavaScript, for use Ajax. The second step is to create a callback function. The third step is to open a request, and the last step is to send the request. Great. In the next lesson, we'll be talking about get and post HTTP methods. So see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.